How do everybody? Now, I'm sure you've already heard that there has been a spontaneous outburst of cultural enrichment in the past 24-hour period, primarily involving the areas of Leeds and London. These two events are completely unrelated from each other, although they are both believed to be fiery but mostly peaceful. Obviously, jokes aside, this is a consequence, in my opinion, of diversity and cultural enrichment in action. Again, partly tongue in cheek in the way I'm presenting that, but I think it just goes to show you of what's happening in a multicultural society. I'm in no way making reference to anybody's skin colour, but purely these opinions are based around cultural differences of the people involved. This is, in my opinion, totally centered around the importation of millions of people from places where they have diametrically opposed ways of living to that we have here in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And you might ask, well, what do I mean by that? Well, basically, I can boil it down to one word, and that word is tribalism. In Leeds, it was started, allegedly, at this point, my understanding is, to do with a Roma gypsy family abusing children, leaving a baby in the care of children who were nowhere near old enough to be looking after them. Social services, my understanding, have tried to turn up to remove the children, and the police went to support them, and this has spiralled out of control into a full-blown riot, with a double-decker bus being set on fire, amongst other things. To be fair, the local, I believe it was MP, councillor, a man who was recently filmed shouting Allahu Akbar and looking rather sectarian, was actually being a voice of reason last night. I don't know the man's name, but fair play to him. He was trying to calm people down, and he was trying to prevent things like wheelie bins being pushed into fires and stuff like that. So, credit is where credit due in that. But to put it short, Roma Gypsies, incredibly isolated community, incredibly tribal people, and lots of people from Bangladeshi and Pakistani sort of regions of Southeast Asia. South Central Asia, sorry. Again, very tribalistic people by nature. Not all, obviously, but that's what they're very well known for. This isn't surprising to me that this has happened, and basically they've pushed the indigenous population out of that part of Leeds, and now they're trying to push the British state out of that part of Leeds as well. And this is really what you would call the colonisation in process. Now, people might turn around and say as well, Dave, Dave, look at me. I'm sat here. I'm speaking English. I've still got my clothes on that I like to wear. I'm not being forced to engage in their cultural practices. Where's the colonisation happening? To the average midwit person who would come out with a statement like that, I would simply say colonisation isn't an event, it's a process. And what is a process? A process is a series of events. For example, America wasn't colonised when the Pilgrims got off the Mayflower at Plymouth Rock. That was merely the first event in a long process of the colonisation of North America. So this is, that's my device, by the way, making that noise. What we are seeing is part of the process of the colonisation of Great Britain. Specifically at this point in time, the centre of the major towns and cities of England being the primary focus of the colonisation at this moment of time. Again, another place that was writing last night in London, Whitechapel. Whitechapel is colonised to the point where the tube station there has Bangladeshi writing for the tube station, as the people who live there can't read any English whatsoever. It's that prevalent of a problem. Again, this was something that the gentleman I mentioned before, he was referencing that part of the problem of last night in Leeds was that the police weren't able to communicate with people. I think that is trying to put an implication of blame onto the police for not being able to speak to them. Well, no, I say the problem there is that these people aren't learning to speak English. They've moved here, they live here, they should speak the language of here. If you don't speak English, you shouldn't be living here. Now, that isn't to include tourists, but if you want to live in England and if you want to qualify for things like social housing, that area is a massive area for social housing. You must be able to speak English. And this problem is further exacerbated by do-gooders doing things like having translators on hand in the NHS, having translators in schools, having translators in courts, having translators in police stations. This has got to stop, because all this does is encourages further colonisation. We have communities now where they are so insular they don't even have to speak the language of the land to get ahead or to get on in life. They can just carry on living as they do where they've come from. And then we wonder why they do things like burn our city centres, why they go on mass protests in places like London for foreign wars that have got nothing to do with us, take over the streets in mass displays of strength and power by praying and blocking traffic, by doing things like forming gangs and abusing underage girls who are living in care. And then the police go as far as to cover those up and arrest the parents who tried to report them to the police. This is colonisation, and it's what it looks like. People need to wake up to that. But anyway, I'm going to move on from that. I've not really got too much to say on that. Actually, one last thing on that. The riots in London, that was because a Bangladeshi man was shot by the police. Yeah, in Bangladesh, by the Bangladeshi police. So they decided to riot in London. That is insane. That is literally That is literally the behaviour of colonisers. They are bringing their problems over here and pulling them onto our streets. And the only solution, in my opinion, to that, deport the lot of them. Every single person caught, get rid. And I don't care if you were born here. That is the solution to this. Deport the lot. You round it up, you're gone. And it can be done, by the way, because the Americans did it in the early 20th century, where they deported nearly 1 million Mexicans back to Mexico. So it can be done. And it happened after the World War II as well, where the Soviet Union deported about 2 million Germans from various parts of Eastern Europe. So yeah, it really, really can be done. And there is recent precedent for it being done very quickly, very efficiently. Anyway, I'm going to leave that there. Donald Trump. Wow, that is crazy. Talk about luck, getting his ears shot off. Personally, I would actually go as far as to say that's divine intervention. I mean that with absolutely zero irony, by the way. The fact that bullet didn't go through his temple and come out the back of his skull, unbelievable. Like the way he was looking and speaking, the bullet should have gone in here and should have come out here. Should have blown the entire rear of his skull should have come off, and dragging a good 1/3 to half of his brain out with it. Definitely fatal. And the fact that he went from this to look like that, from this to look like that, so instead of the bullet going here, it went like that instead. Insane. Absolutely insane that happened. And the story of it keeps getting weirder and weirder, like the roof that the sniper went on, the gunman went on, not having anybody on top of it, even though it was an obvious spot to be sniping from. The director of the Secret Service saying they wouldn't allow anybody on the roof because the pitch of the roof was too steep, so it was unsafe. Although you can clearly see a sniper team behind Donald Trump in the video footage who are on a sloped roof, which has got a far steeper pitch than the one that the shooter himself was on. The fact that a gate was locked and preventing the reaction team from being able to get in. They had to get a 4x4 vehicle to drive through the gate because they couldn't get it unlocked. The parents of the shooter, both being psychiatric experts as well, and reporting the son after he'd gone missing for about 3 hours and the gun's being missing. I mean, that says to me, by the way, that the parent that kid was obviously not a fan of Donald Trump, massively not a fan of Donald Trump, and probably had expressed a lot of very extreme views to his parents, who may have brushed them off as just being, I don't know. I don't think there's a conspiracy, by the way. I do firmly believe that you can explain this really to a crisis in competence through DEI hiring. The head of the Secret Service has explicitly said that she wanted 30% of all Secret Service agents to be women. People might say, why is that a problem? I would probably say it's down to how many people are applying to become Secret Service agents. And to put this quite simply, let's say you have 100 applicants for the jobs coming up. 90 of those are men, 10 are women. Now, let's say they want 30 people from that pool of 100. Well, you're going to take the top 20 men, and then you're going to have to take 100% of the 10 women that apply. Now, the top woman is probably going to be comparable to the top few men, but the law of averages state that the next woman isn't. So woman number 2, she's probably going to be comparable to the 80 to 90% capability men. And this should be, in theory, all the way down. So the bottom 5 women are going to be comparable to the bottom 50% of those men, the bottom 45 of those men. And the bottom woman will be in the should be comparable to the worst performing men. Now that's not to say that these people are bad applicants. It's just that they're not good enough to do the job. And when you're dealing in a job like Secret Service, close protection, where milliseconds matter and people's lives are at stake, it really the difference between the top candidate and the bottom candidate really does matter. It really does. We're not talking about selling fish and chips here in a chippy. We're talking about protecting the president of the United States of America. So the fact that they're just going for some arbitrary number of 30% at any cost, really, I think, is the reason why we've seen this incident happen. And I believe that's on display at the time. There's numerous pictures showing female supposedly bodyguards, and the bodyguards of the close protection bodyguards, you can see through the uniform, they're wearing bulletproof vests. Those people are supposed to jump on the president and use their bodies to protect the president. If that, their bodies are supposed to absorb the energy and stop him from getting shot. One of the female bodyguards is using the president as a human shield herself. There's another one in another picture who's down hiding behind the stairs. And then later on, there's video footage of these fat, and they are fat, morbidly obese nearly, bodyguards, Secret Service female agents, who are so fat they can't even put their own pistols away back in the holsters. And they've got them in the worst, they've got the holsters in the worst place, which is around the back, which massively reduces the amount of time to be able to draw and return fire. These people are a clown show. What they need to do really is just go in there and sack the lot of them. And this would include me, by the way. If you're not tall enough, you're gone. Donald Trump's like, 6'3" or 6'5"? All those bodyguards should be about 6'5" tall to cover him effectively. That would be me gone, by the way. 5'8", I'd be sacked straight away. If you're not able to do the fitness test, and this shouldn't be one set of push-ups for men, a different set of push-ups for women. It should just be, this is the number. If you can't do them, you're gone. Press-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, 1.5 to 2 mile run. All these things should be tested regularly. You've got to shoot so many bullets in so much time with a certain accuracy at different distances. You can't do it. You're gone. Passing various tests like mathematics, problem solving, stuff like that. You can't do them. You're gone. It needs to be that ruthless when you're dealing in that kind of work. If you can't do it, you're gone. It has to be brutal. Brutal. If you are obese, you're gone. Anyway, it's just, but I do believe that it is incompetence, and I do believe that a lot of this has come down to that, as we've seen with Boeing, with plane doors getting blown out and things like that. It's incompetence, it's not malice. And anybody who wants to talk about this to other people, don't talk about rifle, what sort of rifle it was, calibers of bullets, did he carry a ladder there himself? You're just going to sound like a kook whack job. Focus on what is observably true. That situation was created by the mainstream media and various politicians talking about Cheeto Hitler for the last 8 years. That is what has caused that situation to happen, is those people espousing hatred against Donald Trump for 8 years. And that's what you need to hammer home. This is people like CNN, MSNBC, various Democratic politicians, that, what was his name? I can't remember, that previous mayor of New York, who were constantly going on about Cheeto Hitler, Donald Trump is the new Führer, blah, blah, blah. And that is what has caused this to happen. And that's what you need to keep hammering home, is that those people are sick and have caused that shooting to happen. Anyway, 14 minutes. I'm going to leave it at that. I know I've not read from any stories or anything, but I'm just giving me thoughts on those two things. Crazy times that we're living in right now. And ironically, those two riots that have just happened in England, funnily enough, the timing has been crazy with what the Vice President Vance was saying about the UK becoming the first Islamist country to have nuclear weapons. I guess he wasn't wrong there, was he, by the looks of it? Anyway, take care, thank you, and goodbye.